Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And last week was pretty interesting with the mass test around the Blood Raider shipyard. Looks like it still needs a little bit of work when it comes to the AI, but CCP was mostly testing different stuff when it comes to performance, and sometimes it went really well and then sometimes it went really badly. So I do think CCP did a lot behind the scenes to try and stress out the servers. Next to that, on news, I think what's interesting is that CCP is planning to roll out a tech tree rebalance in July already. That's much sooner than I expected. And next to just changing the ships, lowering the amount of subsystems and things like that, they're also planning to change the build materials somewhat. So while we are pretty low on specifics at the moment, all of that could make for an interesting time in the tech tree market. Although you can already see on the ticker that the Tengu is still continuing its slide down. So we'll see if we can make a little bit of an analysis on that. But as always, we will start with plex. That's going to be at 115. 115, and plex are stalling a little bit at around the 2.8 million mark. So if you look here at the price history, we can clearly see that after reaching a 1-year high 2.84 million for one of the new microplex, we are now currently staying at between 2.75 and 2.8 million probably on average. For this episode I'm also going to honor a request. Someone wanted me to not only cover JITA, so we'll take out the filter and we'll actually do this throughout the entire EVE Talk. We know that for plex it does make a substantial difference. 2,734,000 ISK for the highest seller in perimeter and Morrissey. And now we have to go down all the way to until we reach station. Let's see if we can find that here. Almost 2.8 million in JITA. When it comes to the buyers, 2.7 million in Morrissey and perimeter, and then 2.7 million here in JITA as well. But plex is of course a little bit different, and I do think that we'll find out that JITA is still a very large, if not by far the biggest chunk of the actual market around here. We'll see, maybe I am wrong on that, and maybe there is much more activity in the player citadels. So we'll do this one and then we'll decide whether or not we should keep going like that. But on the chart here, plex clearly stalling and at the moment basically moving sideways. It could be interesting. What I've read is that of course the bidding is over for the Alliance tournament, so that should be one incentive gone to manipulate the market. And of course summertime is coming. It's actually incredible weather at the moment here in Belgium, like 30 degrees Celsius. That's not something that we're seeing very often, and yeah, just lots of sun at the moment, so really great. Not the time where you normally spend most of your time behind the computer playing EVE Online. And as a result, I do think activity is going to decrease throughout the summer. CCP has not exactly announced anything all too massive or too interesting. So I think it could mean a serious downtrend in plex. But we'll have to wait and see, of course. At the moment with the new plex, demand is very high, and that is partly because of the accessibility now that it's become so small. Next up we've got the, let's see here, oh, this has changed because of the large skill injectors, and then the skill injectors themselves are gone. Okay, so let's see if I can find the small skill injectors, add to the quick bar. So we need to do a little bit of fixing here on the fly. Let's go like that. So we started off with plex, and here are the large skill injectors. The very same effect, and actually coming through quite substantially here, far above 700 million now, 746 million for the sellers in perimeter and Morrissey. Let's see how far down, 758 million in JITA station, and for the buyer 735 in perimeters in the surrounding system, and then 726 million in JITA station is where the first buy orders come in. So quite interesting. If you look at the chart, of course, we're taking off again quite substantially. So this is because of the small scale injectors. They basically it basically means that you can cut one of these large ones in 5 and you have much more demand all of a sudden because of the accessibility of something that costs maybe 150, 160 million. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But let's take a look at the multiple pilot training certificate as well. That one is also cresting, of course, at 1.4 billion ISK, just like with Plex. The buyers are at 1 billion, 390, 380 million, something like that. You can see that here. At least we have 10 of them in Jita, but in the surrounding stations it's one, just a couple here and there. And the buyers, a couple of people try to buy them for 1.3 billion in 3 jumps away, but then the first one is already Jita at pretty much the same price. So here this is of course very strongly correlated to Plex, and it's going to be pretty much our barometer between the Plex prices and the old Plex prices. So around 1.4 billion, 1 year high obviously. The real question is, should you start selling massively at this point? That's always a little bit risky because considering how much CCP has been manipulating and changing in these Plex related items, in these real life money related items, it's still a little bit of a gamble. Maybe they have more in the pipeline as well. And of course, one thing to keep in mind is that the Plex for all the ORAM balances below 1000 ISK have already been added to the market as well, a little bit sooner than expected, but I think that CCP saw where Plex were heading and that they said, I really don't think it's going to matter if we add that to the player balances and to the supply. It can only help stall the increase in price a little bit. So here we are, and 1.4 billion basically is what Plexes are costing at the moment. Pallet body resculpt, again, here hesitating, doing its own little thing, but if we look at the data here, there's just a couple in station, 316 million for those, and that's pretty much it. Buyers are at 281 million. There are some buyers of that, quite interesting, but really this is a tiny market that hardly matters anymore. If this keeps up, unless CCP comes out with something that actually will have to do with the characters, which I'm still hoping that you'll be able to use your Eve clone for Project Nova. So the idea was a little bit that you would have not just one account, but also the same characters throughout an Eve, a CCP launcher that would have both Eve, Valkyrie, Gunjack, but also Project Nova and whatever else they come out with for the Eve universe. That would be very cool, and that would probably have a major impact on the pallet body resculpt certificate. But for now, none of that is on the horizon. So next up here we get the skill extractors, just like Plex of course, cresting as well, peaking at 330 million. That's quite substantial. Currently selling for 305.5 million in the surrounding player trade hubs, and then up to 312 million in Jita Station. So I would say that that's an okay decrease in price considering taxes. This is probably pretty normal. And then the buyers, interestingly enough here, Jita Station, lowest buyer at 304.7 million. And then basically everyone is competing around the same price, between 300 and 307 million for the buy orders here. So this does make Eve Talk a little bit trickier for these player run stations and for these real life related items here. Skill injector, small skill injectors, obviously a completely new item, so we have a pretty bad chart for that, but these are currently selling for 148.5 million in the surrounding stations and 151.5 million in Jita itself. One thing that is a little bit surprising here, look at the volumes, 27, 67, 30 and 13, all of those in the perimeter, whereas in Jita we're talking 10, 23, 36. So that's quite interesting that you do have the larger volumes in the player-owned stations, and the buyers are at 146.8 million down to 130 million in Jita, so quite an opportunistic jump here. And in Morrissey they're willing to pay quite a nice price for these new small skill injectors, which once again makes skill injectors far more accessible for alpha clones, for other characters and things like that, because 150 million is actually doable. You're a little bit lucky in a 4 out of 10 and you can actually have 150 million. So once again we have this increase in demand for SP because of the increased accessibility. So after the plex related stuff, we'll move on to some minerals. That's going to be at 10 minutes. Okay, and let's take a look at these charts. So we get the full 1 year chart. Yes, we do. Titanium, not good news. You can see the 5-day moving average going down substantially here all of a sudden, breaking the mold. And the sellers, let's take a look here. 445 in station. Here we can see, I think that putting up the perimeter and the player-owned trade hubs has quite a bit less impact, because the lowest sell order 445 is in station. When you look at the volumes as well, 2 billion in JITA, 2 billion in JITA, then we're talking 3 million in Ikami, 13,000 in perimeter, 20 million less than that in JITA again, 40 million, that's 11 jumps away, 1 billion, it's in JITA again, a million here right next door, we're talking 400,000, 100 million, much smaller in volumes, and it's really JITA that's winning out here. When it comes to the buyers, you have to go 2, 7, 11 jumps, quite far away, and we are talking 461, okay, you know, 2 jumps away. In Ancilla, you could try and sell 400,000 units for 4.61. That's not too bad for someone that could go there. Let's do a quick location set destination. Is that still in Highsec? Now I'm actually a little bit curious. Yeah, that's actually still in Highsec. All right. So let's go back for the market, and damn, which one did I take out? Nope, that's not it. It's one of these. So we've got EVE radio, we've got local, we've got help, we've got recruitment. So we don't have EVE Unia. There we go. We are back in action. And the main reason why I tend to stay only in JITA, and I think going forward I will mostly stay in around the JITA station, is because this makes a whole mess of the entire market. But you have to go 9, 11 jumps to take a look at that. You could filter to smaller amounts of jumps and things like that, but the JITA station, as you can see here, especially in Titanium, is by far the market where everything happens. 2 billion, you're not seeing that anywhere else. So for Titanium, it would definitely be, I think, just making more sense to only have the filter on for JITA. But I said that we'll try this one and we'll take a look at it. Here is buy right next, 558 in JITA station. You have to go 8 jumps out in order to find a seller at 525, but that really doesn't matter in the general vibe. It's 720,000 units compared to the 300 million that you often get here, 600 million in JITA station. And if you try to find something like 1 jump out, you have to go all the way here in New Caldari, which again doesn't matter for this EVE talk, for the analysis here. So this is really quite inconsequential when it comes to the mineral market so far. Buyers in perimeter, people are buying for 553, which is just under the JITA market price, but it's at 527 in JITA itself. And here again the difference, 25 million units or 200 million units and 300 million units. There is someone trying to buy 250 million units, but it's at 527, which is pretty much at the perimeter price. So here I'm not liking this filtering for EVE talk so far. So let's take a look at Mixelon, see what's happening here on the chart. First of all, continuing the downslope. This is actually, in my opinion, normal, as activity in the game decreases as we don't have major wars or anything like that happening. Basically, this is being oversupplied just by general mining activity. And here, very clearly, JITA station is where it's at, 11.8, 2 jumps. None of this really has an impact. None of these look to be player-owned structures either. So in JITA, 71.2 is for Mixelon, 16 million, 65 million right here on the sellers, another 60 million right here. When it comes to the buyers, yeah, sure, you have 72.34 in 4 jumps out in Witra, but again, not a player-owned station, so this hardly matters. Quantities 1 hardly matters once again. And then down here for station buyers, 69.89, it's in JITA again, 60 million units. So from here we can once again see oversupply is the name of the game. You get far bigger sell orders coming in than buy orders, and as a result the price is under pressure. Next up here we've got Noxium. Let's take a look at the price history here. After a very nice comeback through March and April, right now we are again giving back quite a bit of ground and heading back down towards 350. So we'll start with Cheetah here, 352 for the sellers and 336 for the buyers. Do these sell orders matter? I'm not seeing any player-owned structures here, and jumps 14, 13, 1, 6. Really, none of these matter, and so we should definitely keep the filter on so far for minerals. We haven't checked isogen. So here again under pressure as well on larger volumes, which means that there is more dumping to be had. When it comes to isogen, prices below 50 ISK apparently. Sellers 46.9, buyers are at 46.07, and again you can see that these other sell and buy orders are not player owned structures, one jump out. These are just strange, very small buy and sell orders compared to what's happening in Cheetah. Next up we've got for nullsec. Let's start here with Zydrine, clearly under pressure as well. That's what I was a little bit afraid of. Buying at 1000 ISK historically is a good idea, but we can see that at the moment there is general oversupply in minerals, and so we are down below 950 ISK. 947.9 for the sellers, and the buyers are at 931 ISK. Here there is one buy order of 122,000 units at 932, but that really doesn't change the general analysis of the mineral market or the Zydrine market here. It's pretty obvious that it's in Cheetah where the trades are happening. Next up we've got the Megasite chart. Obviously after dipping down quite heavily on a massive dump here, we came back a little bit, but the 20-day moving average, you can see that undisturbedly going down below 1250. So here again, minerals under pressure in general. 1190 ISK for the sellers, 1180 ISK for the buyers, and again all the action pretty much is in Cheetah itself. There's just one buyer of 27,000 units in perimeter. Again, no change on the analysis in general. And then next up here we've got Morphyte. That is, well, considering the volumes that I'm seeing here, it's actually holding decently well to a price just below 9,000 ISK. So this is okay for the Morphyte chart considering the dumping that's been happening, but we can clearly see that once again minerals under pressure. Sellers in Cheetah 9,089, 88 ISK, 9,000 ISK pretty much. And buyers are at 8,800, and there are a couple of sellers, but again Yeti Creations, that's probably a player-owned station. One jump out in New Caldari, selling for just below 9 million ISK, but really 3 of these sell orders, they hardly matter. It's not like there's a huge margin or that there's huge extra demand in the perimeter station. So the mineral market is definitely one that I think makes more sense to analyze without the filter. Let's see what the PI market says. I think that was the biggest gripe that that viewer had, is that the PI market sometimes had huge demand in the surrounding system. So we'll take a look at that, 1830. And we'll start here with the construction blocks that after dipping down towards or just below its average is actually coming back a little bit on the higher volume. So here sellers and buyers could be quite interesting. Sellers 13,600 in Cheetah Station, buyers 12,500, and here I mean there is 12,503.04 in perimeter, so that's basically in line with this market. 2,600, it's quite a decent amount as well. Here we have 6,000. We also have 5,300 here, 1,560 right here. Then down here another 6,000, but the first really big one, 98,000 coming in Cheetah. Next up 71,000 in Morrissey. So for the demand here I have to agree. For the supply definitely not, right? Nothing else in these stations. For the demand, yes. But now my question is, how is this ever going to get filled up if people don't bring any of that stuff to these trade hubs? Because they're still trying to sell in the Cheetah Station for the higher prices. How are you going to fill this up? This is a sign that yes, people are trying to maybe start up these player-owned trade hubs, but that especially the sellers are quite hesitant to bring anything there. The fact that we are seeing maybe a doubling of the buy orders volumes in these player trade hubs is quite interesting in and of itself, but I personally don't think that it changes the analysis that much. It could change the idea of oversupply. So we maybe have to keep in mind that there is this extra demand in these player-owned stations. And as a result, on lower prices, what this could have as an effect, of course, is that people will quickly sell to these buy orders when they're very close in margin. That is something that is definitely a possibility. But for the sellers, so far here, not much to be spotted. And I would put construction blocks with 12,500 on the buy orders right on, or maybe even still a little bit above its average, and 13,600 is probably a pretty good price for construction blocks, historically speaking. Next up, consumer electronics. Here, a very similar chart. After dipping down quite substantially, we're back well above our average. So good news for the PI market, making a swift comeback after last week. When it comes to the sellers, almost 16,000 in station. The rest here, I'm not really spotting anything one jump out. So here again, sellers, they're sticking to JITA. The buyers, 14,500, it's in station, but there is this massive demand, 30,000 units in perimeter, another 74,000 units in perimeter. This again could have a massive impact on lower prices, but on higher prices I think people just come to JITA and completely disregard these buy orders. So this is quite interesting. There is this demand in these player-owned stations, but my real question is, how are any of these going to ever get filled up? Next up here we've got coolants. These are going down. Let's see, can we grab an average price here? Maybe the bottom one. Less than 11,000 ISK, I would say that that's below average a little bit. Maybe 12,000, something like that would be my aim. 11,600 for the buyers. I would say that this is below average for coolants. 10,800 for the buyers here. So sellers 11,600, buyers 10,800. I would say most of this is below average, and I would not blame you if you would actually hold on to your stocks at this point when it comes to coolants. Here again, sellers, they're all in JITA. Buyers, yes, there is this extra demand in perimeter and in Morrissey, 217,000 units. That is definitely quite a lot of demand here. But again, chance that this is gonna get filled, I just don't see it. There's not even enough supply in JITA to fill that order. So it is pretty massive, but I'm seeing this as maybe an attempt to jumpstart PI trade in these player-owned trade hubs. Is it working? Considering that the prices in JITA are immediately competing with them as well, I'm not exactly sure. Enriched uranium next, flatlining after having to give back ground. Still 15,000, so that's definitely, I would say, above average and a very good price. 16,000 for the most sellers, one seller at 15,300. And again, a couple of these. Yeah, there is one sell order in perimeter. All right, the first one, it's 1,400 units. So that really doesn't matter in the general picture, I don't think. We can say that it's almost 16,000 for enriched uranium on the seller side, 15,300 on the buyer side. Again, you've got some of these orders, some of them have pretty big volumes, but they're competing exactly with JITA itself. And I personally just don't think that this is taking off just yet. Next up, mechanical parts. Also still going down slowly. Currently, yeah, 11,500, probably around its average. 11,575 for the sellers, and buyers are at, let's take a look here. You do have 11,800 in perimeter, then 11,300 in JITA station. There's one buy order of 2,000 units at 11,800. Change the analysis again, I really don't think so. 106,000, 135,000 in JITA. Sure, you have 50,000 in Morrissey as well, 18,000 here, 40,000 here, but overall, except that there is this extra demand, I'm not seeing the value of constantly keeping all of that analysis here. Although it matters less in this PI market than in the mineral market, because you don't have all of these strange sell orders far away. Next up, oxygen here. Basically at a pretty low price at the moment, definitely below average. 386 for the sellers, I would say, and the buyers are at 367. Yes, couple of really nice buy orders actually, 380,000 in perimeter, 184,000. But this is oxygen we're talking about. We're not talking about the other PI materials. And again, 367.23 in Jita Station, 367.28 in Morrissey. That's hardly a big difference in price. So it's not like you get this massive discount or this massive better price by going to these trade hubs. I just think it's not happening for the PI market, and that these massive volumes are basically people trying to get this to start, but at the moment I'm just not seeing it. Yeah, first one here, 86,000 at 390 in perimeter. That does happen, but it's one sell order in oxygen as well. Next up here we've got robotics. This could be more interesting, I think, continuing to go down. Are we below 100,000 ISK? That's the real question. 103,000 for the sellers, so still selling a little bit above average, but not by much anymore. Buyers are at 102,000 ISK, and here for this more expensive, this is something that strikes me right away. You have, sure, you've got one seller of 410 units that is competing with the Jita price. That's really about it. And then here in station, 24,000 units at 102,000 ISK. This is Jita that is basically having most of the impact and deciding about what's happening with the robotics market. You do have 148,000 units being bought, or a buy order of that volume in perimeter as well, but considering that almost no one is selling there, 2,600, 5,000 here and 400 here, but that's really it. Again, the added value is not much, except that there is this extra demand. People are willing to buy a lot more of this in the perimeter station, and again on lower prices I do think some of those get filled up, but it's very hard to differentiate between all of that. And well, it is an important note though. This is a lot more demand that exists, just one jump out. It probably gets filled up as prices go down and people say, you know what, the margin is very small between sellers and buyers. I'm not going to go that extra jump into Jita. I'm just going to dump this to this buyer in perimeter. That could happen. I do see that as an important bit of information that we get out of this. Next up here we get the rocket fuels, also trying to go back towards the previous average, but actually bouncing back a little bit at the end. Let's take a look at where the sellers are at. 13,250, definitely above average I would say, and the buyers are at 12,650. That's a decently wide margin. You don't see any sellers until 13,500 right here, yeah, in perimeter, and then those are in line in volumes, so but 13,600 is actually Qatari construction production plants. It's not even in any of these player-owned trade hubs right there. So kind of strange. On the buyer side here again, 12,650, so competing with the Jita price. They're not going way below that, and yes, there is this extra demand. One jump out, 100,000 units here. Another 25,000 units here in Morrissey. So yes, there is this extra demand. Does it change the whole picture of the analysis? Personally, I don't think so. Self-harmonizing power cores next. So these are slowly going down in price. Well, no, it's hesitating. I would say it's going flat at the moment. 2.2 million in Jita Station. A little bit above that, 240 I would say for Jita. On the seller side, buyers 2,126,000. So margin, there's a bit, but not very much. There are a couple of sellers in perimeter that are undercutting seriously here. 2.2 million, a little bit below that, which is quite interesting. 163 units. That could put a little bit of pressure, but let's take a look at the daily volumes here. Almost 8,500 units, so almost 10,000 units on average a day. So these 250 units in perimeter are not really going to have that big of an impact. I think we have to start looking here at 2.2 million for the actual sell price. Still, you get some opportunities here for those investments that I was talking about. That is definitely true. I'm looking at these advanced PI materials related to structures as a bit of an investment throughout the summer, planning for the winter expansion when the refineries come out. And it can be important to keep an eye on this for possible buy opportunities, because this is not bad. This is much closer to the buy orders, and so if you want to buy those straight away, you might want to go to the perimeter market. You're not going to pick up thousands of them there, but for the people that are looking for this smaller investment, like myself, that could be pretty useful. Then when it comes to the buyers here, 2.1 million. Again, you do have this extra demand, 1500 units, 2600 units. This is definitely not something to just disregard. There is more demand, just one jump out for all of this PI, which probably partly explains the really high prices that we've seen for so long in a lot of these other PI materials. But should we keep this for the analysis? I'll let you guys decide. Personally, I don't think it has such a big impact on the analysis of what's happening in general in the market. I think we can afford not to do it, especially in the sellers here for PI. Next up, we've got superconductors. Let's take a look at that here. Still going down, heading towards, what kind of price range is that? 11,000 ISK. And here is why we don't really like that. There's a full front page of sellers at around 11,160, but none of these are material to the JITA analysis here. So if I would not be surprised if some of these are in low sec. Exactly. So these are like bait sell orders. The volumes are also almost inconsequential, and these are bait sell orders try and get you into low sec in a transport ship, pick up a couple of these cheap ones and then get blown up. That's basically the idea behind these, and this was EVE Uni. So yeah, let's also take this out to try and clean it up like that. Bring EVE Uni back. So this is why I would personally prefer to see the filter on and only take a look at JITA itself. So superconductors were still under pressure as well. What are we selling at here? 12,128, probably around average. And then for the buyers, 11,148. Again, JITA station is winning out. Sure, there is this extra demand, 100,000 units in perimeter. I just personally don't see this get filled up. I don't really see that happening, although it is in the last 24 hours, so it is possible that these buy orders do get filled up and have their impact on extra demand that is invisible if we don't look at it. This does look like this. It does look like we've got this massive oversupply compared to demand, because a lot of the demand is just one jump out in these player-owned trade hubs. That's definitely a very good point to make and something to keep in mind if I do this analysis without with the filters on here. So we'll continue with the filters off because of the request. I'll let you guys decide whether or not you prefer to have the full analysis on what's happening here as well. Here are test cultures actually taking off. That's quite nice for me personally, because I bought at around 7,500 ISK. So sellers are up to 9,400 ISK. That's not bad. The real question is, how much momentum will this have? And should I keep it or try to sell now at the current prices? Undercutting is already quite serious. You can see here 3 days ago, almost 10,000 ISK. Then we go down to 9,700. 9,600 right here, 9,350. So there's a lot of undercutting happening. Any of that happening in the player-owned trade hubs. There is one sell order here with 25,000 units. That's it. So on the seller side of things for PI, these are hardly consequential. People are still going to JITA 4.4 for their PI sales. On the buyer side, yes, you do have this extra volume. Again, 50,000 here, 50,000 there. It's definitely there, but they are competing with the JITA prices themselves, and I would personally not be surprised that a lot of people still take that extra jump into JITA and then just sell to the sell orders. So this is, we can take a look at the average prices. The closer it is to 9,350, the more the sellers dictate the price, and the less of these buy orders are actually going to get filled. So let's take a look at the current, and here 9,600 and 9,000. So there are some buy orders getting filled, I have to be honest here, but I personally do think that it's okay to do the analysis without everything else. Next up here, wetware mainframe continuing the slow descent here. 2.25 million does seem to be a bottom that is hard to reach, but the 20-day moving average here is now slowly trending towards that. So I actually think that with where mainframes could go lower. Again, sellers 2.3 million, it's all JITA. Buyers 2.2 million, first one in JITA. There are these volumes here in Perimeter and Morrissey. This is true, but and of course here you do see that you still have some buy orders as well. 200 here, 500 here, 1,000 here. If we take out this filter, it looks like there is no demand. That is definitely true, and was a mistake in the analysis if I assumed here that there was just no demand for these goods, and that as a result we should keep going down. Although we're slowly going down there, and this extra demand is probably putting a bit of a brake on that. We also, I don't think, have to overemphasize this extra demand, because 2.3 million and 2 million for the rest of that demand. The average price on the chart here is 2.2 million, so it's definitely like 75% sell orders that are making up these volumes at least, and as a result I don't think the analysis is that wrong. So next up, after PI, we have some Tick 1 chips, 3550. It's gonna be a pretty long one because of all the extra analysis, but I do want to offer that answer to that viewer and take a look at the results without the filter. So here is the Abaddon, hesitating, but at a higher price point, still 170 million. If this is the average, we're going down in price. 185 million or 84 million for the sellers, 175 million for the buyers. Again, does Perimeter or Morrissey have an impact here? 6 being bought at 156 million, that hardly makes any difference. 2 here at 155 million. The sellers, they are all in JITA, so I would say no for the Abaddon for sure. The Caracal could be a little bit different, so this one is basically flatlining and struggling to keep a price that is close to 10 million, currently selling for 9.4 million. Buyers are at 8.8 million in JITA, 8.9 million in Morrissey for 3 of them. So again here, station selling, a little bit of extra demand in Morrissey and Perimeter, but in my opinion that does not have an impact on the market, because these will hardly get filled up, in my opinion. Next up here we get the Coveter, flat at around 25 million ISK. So again, it's lower than before Ascension, but made a little bit of a comeback, and it's actually an okay price I think for the Coveter. 25.3 million for the sellers, 22.1 million for the buyers. Top buyers and sellers are in JITA. Extra demand here, yes, it's there. Will this get filled? I really don't see that happening that much. Next up here we get the Hurricane, going down in price as well, towards that 1 year low. I mean, the bottom here seems to be close to 42 million on average. That's where the market says, you know what, I'm actually going to buy a lot of Hurricanes. And 44.5 million for the sellers, 42.5 for the buyers. And with a lack of demand, well, I'm actually not even seeing that. 4 here in Perimeter, 12 in Perimeter. Here's 40 in Morrissey. Sure, these are competing with the other buy orders in JITA station itself, maybe helping keep this from crashing down a little bit, but again, I'm not seeing the added value of risking some of these crazy orders. That would be like 14 jumps out and at like 150 million, completely disregarding that. Those low sec baits that come in here as well. So here's the Maelstrom, slowly going up on the 20-day moving average. That's actually okay to see. Currently selling for 174 million ISK bars at 159, and again, nobody is selling in Perimeter except here at 190. It's also just a couple of them, so that doesn't change anything. And the buyers, yeah, there are a couple in New Caldari and in Perimeter, but it's nothing to write home about. Megatron next. This is actually bad news at the end here, going down back below the 20-day moving average, but 160 million coming from 180 was actually a little bit up, so that was not bad. Megatron selling for 159 million. Sure, one of them is being sold at 157 in Perimeter, but below 160, so definitely pretty cheap Megatrons at the moment. And the buyers are at 147 million, so this still has a little bit of margin. And I suspect that, what is this bottom right here? 140 million. If we come close to that on the sell orders actually, so that's still quite a ways to go. That's when the market say, you know what, we're just gonna buy everything that's coming in at this point. So we're not oversupplied like crazy. Is there a lot of extra demand around JITA? 4 to 1 to here again in New Caldari, but I don't think it really changes all that much. Prophecy next, going after reaching a 1-year low, still under pressure here, struggling to get back above. This is probably, what would that be, 48 million or something like that. 48.4 million for the sellers, 44.5 for the buyers. Yes, there is one pretty big 43 prophecies being bought at 45 million in Morrissey. So someone is trying to pick up and creating a bottom that is not in JITA, in the prophecy market. It is true that is happening here, but again, the sellers at 48.5 million are basically, I think, dictating most of the market. Let's take a look at that. 47.8, so they truly are. Scorpion next. Slightly going up after reaching a 1-year low. So this is a pattern that you will see when we break down to really low prices, like here at 130 million. The market does come in with a little bit of extra volume, not even that much, but some people do buy those cheaper ships. So 147 million in JITA station. Then here, these are again 11, 13 jumps out. Inconsequential. I would much prefer to see it like this to get an actual feel of what's happening in JITA, because none of these really are going to have an impact on the market, especially not this one at 132.5. That party is over. You basically see this lag between JITA, that is the forerunner of most of the market, and people in Autosella. Well, they don't have 100 scorpions to bring to the market, or there is not that much interest in Autosella to grab that one scorpion in order to see what happens to the rest of the market, or as an investment or anything like that, because it's 13 jumps out, of course. So sellers 147 million of scorpion, up a little bit. The buyers are at 136 million ISK, and there is one scorpion being bought at 137 in Morrissey. That's a little bit different. 20 more here in Morrissey. That adds a bit of demand, but in general, not that much to be said. Here is the Vexor next, going above 10 million, I think. Yep, 10.3 million for the sellers. It's all JITA. Buyers are at 9.5 million. It's all JITA. So this is really, again, not a necessary filter, in my opinion, for the Tech 1 chips. Let's take a look at Tech 2. So things could be different here. We'll take a look. Aris taking off a little bit. That's not bad. A couple days ago, selling for almost 24 million ISK. So lack of supply, 24 million. Buyers are at 20.4 million. There is one sell order, but it's in line with the rest of JITA. So this is, I would say, like 90% JITA on the seller side. On the buyer side, again as well. 20.4 million in JITA station. There is a little bit of extra demand in Perimeter and Morrissey. This just is probably not going to get filled. So there we go. Next up here, we've got the Claw going down. Ooh, this is quite interesting, because we are reaching this very low point here at 19.5 million on average, 19.1 in station for the buy orders. Then here in Morrissey in Perimeter, 19.3 million. They are slowing this down a little bit, but the sellers here, it's all JITA, 20.3 million, 20.4 million. So here, this is very interesting. And personally, if I would have to compete for a buy order, I would dare to compete with the 19.1 million in JITA itself. Hope to be in between here, 19.2 million, and we can still pick this up, because I do think that a lot of people might still make a move on that in JITA itself. So there we go. Claws, very cheap at the moment, heading to that interesting territory on the chart where you might want to buy a couple. The Crow next, slightly going down, but again here we do have this decrease in volatility that we do not like. Sellers are at 24 million, buyers are at 22 million. There is one buyer at 22.3 million in Morrissey, so they are forming a little bit of that bottom as well. But that's really it. They are basically lowering volatility with extra buy orders, one jump out, which I would dare personally to disregard if I'm trying to pick up a couple of crows. I would dare to keep in mind that it's 22 million in JITA itself. Next up here, we've got the Aries. That one is going down in price. Okay, 43.3 million on average, 47 million still for the sellers, 41.3 for the buyers. Interesting, quite a few buy orders getting filled here. And then we see that the top buy orders are in Cheetah. The volumes in these other stations are pretty negligible. And here in station, well, it's all Cheetah when it comes to selling of ships. Flycatcher next, pretty flat. This is not what we want to see, unfortunately. Also at the higher trade range at 65 million, 65.4 for the sellers, 59 for the buyers, and Cheetah is winning out, 57.8 in perimeter. So here there is this competition that is across Cheetah and one jump out. That does happen. So maybe we should work with the filters like this most of the time. You know, see what's selling in Cheetah, because people are definitely still not selling in these trade hubs, but keep an eye on the demand around here as well by turning off the filter, the range filter on the buy orders. That is something that I might want to do on the next one as a bit of a test. Here is the Heretic next, jumping up quite nicely, 60 million on the way back down. So you could have bought for, let's say, 50 million, currently selling for 58.4 million, all of them again in Cheetah. This is 8 jumps out. We can definitely get rid of that filter just to see what's happening with the market. Buyers 52 million, and it's pretty much all Cheetah station once again. The Hound next, pretty flat, and here selling for 21.5, buyers 19.5. Yeah, it's not just Cheetah, so you do have this extra demand, one jump out. It has to be said. Yeah, maybe we should do it like that on the next ones. We'll take a look at it. That is definitely a possibility. Here's the Malediction, way too flat again in my opinion. Selling for 24.3 million, buyers are at 22 million. And again here you could say, well, why do you need that extra filter? The fact is that you sometimes get those really weird sell orders, as you saw in one of those PI materials, where it's just full of tiny bait orders here and there. Strange stuff can happen, and a filter just in Cheetah station does make things very compact, clear cut, and I do like that aspect of it. So here we go, Malediction. Yeah, on the chart we really don't like where it is. Buyers at 22 million, still a little bit high in my book. Okay, moving on next to the Manticore. That was up a little bit, going back down, but still selling at quite a respectable 27.5 million. So here you can see that the buy opportunities are at around 23 million for the Malediction. Currently selling for 27 million. This is 10 jumps out. This is what I'm talking about, right? Oh, no, it's 25 million. No, it's 27 million, because this is 10 jumps out and really doesn't matter at all. So it's 27 million for the sellers. So if you could have bought at 23 million, that's probably a little bit of risk, not that much. And the buyers are at 24 million at the moment. Here you do see there is this little bit of extra demand around Cheetah. Next up, we've got the Nemesis. After going to less than 20 million, jumped up a little bit, but this is too timid to say that you can make great money on that. Selling for 21.5 million, again 10 useless orders, 10 jumps out, and then buyers are at 19.5 million. You do have 48 here in Morrissey, the extra demand. So it may be that investors are looking for those buy orders in those trade hubs, but do those get filled very often? Maybe I should make the test just to give you guys a bit of feedback on that. Here's the Purifier. So we had a bit of a sell order in early May at 26.4 million. Currently selling for 22 million, buyers 20.6 million, and this is definitely pretty low. You could consider going for a couple of Purify buy orders, although the claw is more clear cut. And finally here we have the Saber as well. In between, so we don't like where the Saber is sitting, selling for 43.4 million, buyers are at 48 million. Yeah, 50 million, going up to 50 million in Morrissey. Again, the question is, does this get filled up? So maybe we'll keep this off filter next week in the Tech 2 market. This could be pretty interesting to see if those orders stick around for a very long time or not. Not exactly sure how that works. Next up, the Tech 3 market. That could be a bit more interesting. We are at 49.20. And I actually forgot to write down the timestamp of Tech 2 ship, so I'll have to look for that in the recording. Next up here, let's take a look at the Tech 3 destroyers. Here is the Confessor. So after this great spike, that was a sell opportunity. We are back in the oversupplied territory. 30 million for the sellers, 276, 145. That's pretty bad. 27.5 million for the buyers, and perimeter is competing again, adding a little bit of demand, but really that's why we could sum this down, right? I think we could basically stick with the good old if talk format that keeps an eye on Cheetah. But what we have to keep in mind is that there is this extra demand, one jump out in perimeter, in Morrissey, in the player owned trade hubs, and that sometimes, probably on prices that are diving down quite quickly, this is basically going to lower volatility because people will not do the extra jump into Cheetah. They'll just sell straight to those buy orders. That is something that can happen, but in general, I don't really get the feeling that these player owned trade hubs have the volumes, have the trade, the active trade, have the sellers, especially they don't have the sellers. Here are the Confessor sellers. They're all in Cheetah 4.4, and as a result, those markets just aren't competing with Cheetah, except for the real life money stuff. It is true that for plex, injectors, extractors, stuff like that, there is a lot of happening in big volumes there, but for the rest of the market, it's still all Cheetah 4.4 because that's where the sellers are going. Next up, let's take a look at the Hecate here, also under pressure, going back towards those bad times. 30 million, 120 to 40, 120. So yeah, this is your time again to consider whether or not you want to risk this as an investment. I've always said don't do this with too much risk, but buying a couple of Hecates for 30 million, a couple of Confessor for 30 million might be something to consider for the longer term. Here is the Jackdaw, under pressure as well. Here again, 112, 199 at 30 million. That is the current sell price for all of these tactical destroyers. Here is this Vapel. So again, 30 million and hundreds of them coming to the market. So I think it's pretty obvious that we can say for the tactical destroyer market that again we are oversupplied massively, and there is this current buy opportunity at 30 million. The real question is, of course, will the Tech 3 rebalance have an impact on all of this, and will we actually have sell opportunities? For the Confessor, it was pretty obvious that that did happen at some point, and for the Hecate as well. So those are two ships I do think are flown from time to time in nullsec. That is, I think, your safest bets. The Jackdaw a little bit, but this is just a spike up to 41 million. Yeah, a quarter of the price, not that bad. And then actually this Vapel, you would think that that one is pretty popular, considered cancer in a lot of by a lot of players, but this one is actually very timid. Maybe because it's so much more common, much more of a focus by some producers, and as a result doesn't show this big sell opportunity that some of the others did have. But yeah, all of them 30 million oversupplied. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to invest a little bit of risk in that. Next up, here are the cruisers. Oh, actually the start of the announcements from CCP doesn't seem to have done these any good. Here's the Legion at a 1-year low and still going lower. 112 million for the sellers. Again, it's all Cheetah. And then the buyers 108 million. There are a couple of buy orders around here, but again, that's really all we can really take away from this, is that there are some buyers, just one jump out. Next up here is the Loki. This is quite interesting. I think that the dev blog mentioned that the Loki would get dual tank bonuses, so for both armor and shield tank, and there is some interest in that apparently, because there is a big volume spike up to 92 of them, slight uptick in the price. Lokis are selling for 110 million though, that is quite low, and 103 million for the buyers. Next up here we've got the Proteus, that is just still continuing to go down. A little bit of a pullback at the very end here, but clearly at a 1-year low as well. Selling for 114.5 million, buyers 105 million. Again here, all Cheetah on the sellers, a little bit of extra demand. 39 here, not bad, but that's 5 jumps out as well. So, and finally here we have the Tengu, also at a 1-year low, flattening finally. 108 million for the sellers, 250 and 130. That is pretty crazy. Again, it's all cheetah. And here on the buyers, 102.4 million, 102.4 million cheetah as well. So again, that little bit of extra demand, that is correct. That does, well, a little bit. It's actually quite a decent amount of extra demand that sits just one jump out of cheetah. But you know, sometimes Morrissey, sometimes it's perimeter. So I don't really think that a lot of people bother too much with that. These are, if they get filled up, great, they've got their investment, but they are not having that big of an impact on the market in general, I personally feel. And then now for the extra products, 55 minutes, right? I wanted to take a quick look at the melted nanoribbons. So this is one of the loot that you get, melted nanoribbons from wormhole space. My brother wants to go back into wormhole space a little bit, and so I want to take a little bit of a look and see what's been happening with those guys. They were very interesting in the past. I actually made a couple of trades in melted nanoribbons, but I think that the situation at the moment is basically wormhole space is so calm as well, just like nullsec, no big wars, no big evictions, and with the added stability of all of the new structures, these have basically become farms of most of these stuff. And so you can see here that we started the year at 3 million for the melted nanoribbons, and we're ending at 1.5 million, 1.4 million for the sellers, in fact, 1.4 million for the buyers as well. So this is right on the edge here. Very low price, very cheap price, 50% loss over 1 year, and I think that it is wormhole stability. And so this is one thing to keep in mind. I think the interesting things that are going to come out in the upcoming weeks are, of course, the tech tree rebalance that's going to come in the news. It's like open forum posts. CCP has a group of players that they're going to talk to and ask specific feedback on their plans for the tech tree rebalance. It could be quite interesting, but one thing to keep in mind, I think, in general, when it comes to the economic pictures and opportunities for these, is that people are not very confident that it's going to be good for the tech tree ships, because again, in the latest dev blog, although they didn't mention battleships, they mentioned that what they don't like about tech tree cruisers is that they push out other ships because they take over their roles and do them better. And this time they were talking about the cruisers, mostly Tech 2 cruisers and things like that. And so the only real way to fix that is to nerf them, which a lot of people are not going to like, which is normally not going to increase demand for these goods either. And then considering that most of the material gathering is currently in a very stable place, I don't think that we'll see that much of an economic impact from the tech tree rebalance, unless CCP really comes out with something very surprising, something completely out of left field that nobody was expecting. That could make it interesting, but right now, especially looking here at melted nanoribbons, is something that comes from sleepers, so from wormhole activity. It's down in price so much that there must be extremely high supply, extremely good stability in wormhole space. I'm not hearing a lot of conflict or anything like that there, which of course is mostly due to the new structures. Those basically allow you to put down stations in there that are very safe, and so evictions have become much harder, much more difficult to do, much more time consuming. It just happens less, and as a result we have very stable supply markets, a bit of oversupply in tech tree ships in general, and it's not looking like they're going to add a lot of functionality, or like they're going to make tech tree ships even more desirable than they are now. As a result, my expectations in general are that this is only going to get worse. Tech tree ships are oversupplied like crazy, so this is going to not increase demand. And when it comes to the extra materials, that's maybe the one thing that could be interesting, is that they might change the needed materials for producing them, and that might be up for a little bit of speculation, make some interesting market forces, or unleash some interesting market forces. But again, everything else is so stable and generally oversupplied. I think it's going to be very short-lived, and it's all going to stabilize very, very quickly in the tech tree market. So there you go, guys. That's it for this Eve Talk. Kept it just under an hour. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know about the filters. I personally think we can just keep them out. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.